Thank you everyone for joining, and welcome to BUZZIN SHORTS. It's only the second year that we're doing this, and we've already doubled the number of rooms that we have. So I hope you're all having a good time so far, and we'll continue to do so. So this is part of our guest speaker series. So we've got two honoured guests here today. We've got Luke and we've got Maryam, and I'll be asking them some questions, and then later on I'll offer it to the audience to ask some questions as well. So I'll do a brief introduction, but please do interrupt me if I'm saying anything wrong. So we've got Luke, who is a very experienced sound recordist and also does camera and lighting, and he was working for the BBC for a long time and is now a freelancer. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
And we've got Maryam, who is an actor, director and producer.
Yes.
And is Egyptian and based in London and has a very unique style that we will get to.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, so then let's start. The first question is, I'll start with Luke. How did you get into filmmaking?
I'm very old. I started my career in BBC Radio. Very lucky, joined the BBC from college, radio engineering, radio and sound has always been, and music, always been a love. So I started in radio, and like you always do, you go to the BBC's own college to learn the BBC way. They say, forget everything you learned in college and school, this is the way we do it. So they teach you everything. It was an amazing experience. They teach you, engineering, sound engineering, transmitters, the magic of RF transmitters, everything, and you go around in placements and learn everything, and then they stick you in a basement room in Broadcasting House mending stuff, and then you get to go to studios and stuff like that. So that was a fantastic grounding. Very brief thing. Photography was always a hobby when I was there, and when an opportunity arose to do some photography, I joined the education department, which did publishing for books. Photography was a hobby, and they said, oh, we need some photos of this, need some photos of that, so I started doing that. So I then became a stills photographer for about 10 years, which again, amazing experience, going on film sets, going on location, doing publicity photos. And I was just saying, when you're on a film set, you just watch the DoP and you learn about lighting. And you question, you say, always ask questions. Oh, what's that light doing there? Why is that spark kind of flickering his fingers over the light? So learning, watching and learning is great. And also on film sets and drama sets, you learn about film discipline. You learn that, each department has its own jobs, and you don't interfere with other people's kit. You don't just go and borrow something because it'll be useful. You learn that discipline, which is very important if you're going on to work on film sets. And then after that, just when small DV cameras came in, and we're talking about things like the Sony VX1000, which was, someone will give me a date. That would be late 90s.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound familiar.
No,
Yes.
because you're all so young.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these small cameras came in, and at the time, TV was standard definition and 4:3 in those days. So Sony brought out this VX1000, it recorded on DV tapes, and of course the management at the BBC said, oh, they're broadcast quality, we can give them to everyone to make their own films. So I then got collared as a photographer who knew about lighting to train people how to use these little cameras. And then, so I then started shooting proper stuff. And then I spent 10 years, 20 years probably, as a cameraman, DOP, going and making fantastic programs. Very blessed and lucky. The last 10 or so years, 10, 15 years, I was working in arts and classical music, going all around the world making fantastic music programs, worked on the proms every year, making great films. But also, I still had that background in sound, so I kept forgetting the sound stuff. So again, I would go out as the epitome of a one-man band. So I would go out and shoot. I'd take radio mics. I'd set up stand mics, do documentaries, running around chasing junior doctors with radio mics on, doing those typical not reality, but real life TV documentaries.
So you do the sound and the camera.
Yeah, you run around with none of these small little tiddly cameras. We're talking about digibeta cameras, all day on your shoulder, before easy rigs were invented. You know, so that's why I've got a bad back. So you run around with a digibeta, 2 radios on the top. That's it, and then you give it all to the editor, and they do their magic on it. So I spent many happy years doing that, and then I left the BBC. And when I left the BBC, I thought, I can't be asked to carry all this kit around with me anymore. So I then decided just to focus on sound, which was always a love. So now I'm freelance, I just mainly go out doing sound. I still have a project I do at the BBC, which is interviews, so I film interviews and do the sound. It's just a sit down. So I just get a phone call and say, be there and do that. This is your producer. So things like from, what was I? Last week before last, I was at the launch of the new FIFA 26 video game, 2 days in London, with all these blokes shouting at the screen thinking they can football better than the professionals. And then on Friday I was on the Star Wars set, doing a behind the scenes film.
Which one is that? Is that the series?
The TV series 2.
The Mandalorian, I think.
That's Ahsoka 2 or something like that.
Oh,
the TV series for Disney Plus or Sky or something.
It's not quite the Mandalorian stuff, but still cool. Still
Lucasfilms.
There's good and bad Star Wars shows now.
And that was great. I was doing that for an American film crew, for an American production. They came in for press day and they needed a crew, so I just turn up and do stuff. I did a pop video with Sigrid. Anyone know Sigrid?
Yeah. See some nods.
She was doing a pop video, and again, everything is socials now. Everything is social. Yeah. So, when I turn up, I say, "Oh, hello, how are you? I'm Luke. I'm a TV person. Oh, we've never done TV. We just do social stuff, and this is proper, proper crews with Harrys and Reds and stuff like that, shooting stuff for socials. It's like a different planet. So, so that's me in God, I've taken all the time.
No, we have time. Yeah.
And after this panel, I'll be running a workshop about how to get great sound on set. So stay behind and join us.
It will be right in this room.
Yeah,
so
in
it
this
should
room.
be easy to find.
And hands-on demo. I brought a lot of kit, so we can have a play. We can talk about stuff. I can draw some diagrams. So I've got the whiteboard out.
Love a whiteboard.
So please hang around, and because you probably gathered, I love talking about the craft.
Well, thank you very much. That's quite a journey. And Maryam, can you tell us about what got you into filmmaking?
So I think for me, filmmaking, it's more like a tool of communication rather than, a film has to look like this or look like that. For me, it's more like what it has to feel like. So, I think a lot of my stuff ends up being somewhere between documentary and fiction, just because, I don't like the idea of a binary in, film. I don't like it to be clear what's real, what's not, because then what's the point? I already know. Were you expecting to hear something else?
No, this was the unique style that we were going to get to. No, that's very cool. Thank you. And when did you first know that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
I can't pinpoint it, and I don't think there was any specific time. It's more I got a camera. I started filming videos as opposed to shooting photos. I'm I like doing that. So that was pretty much it. And I think it's more. I don't think there was any specific time, except maybe when I was doing my theater BA. And I was also doing a minor in film. I was at an American university, so they have a major and a minor system. And I was I trained as an actress when I was doing my theater BA, but then when I was studying film, I was okay, this is interesting. There's so many ways to go about it. It's not just one size fits all. There's more room for play in film than I feel in theater, because there's only so much you can do with live performance, live theater. But I feel with film, it's I get to play more, and I think I really enjoyed that, and this is what really got me into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And I think I'll ask you probably the same question in a second. But I think I was going to ask Luke about, you do multiple different roles, as I guess some people in filmmaking do. And you've touched upon it as well, right? You do lighting and camera and sound. Sort of right now, which would you say is your favorite, or would you want to keep doing all three, or do you feel like you would be happily just picking one?
Okay, nowadays as a freelance, I mainly go out to do sound because
is that just because of the weight of the gear?
Because of gear and the way my career is going, but I find it quite frustrating because as a freelance, you get called to do any job. And it's like, oh, this is dull. This is not my interest. Football, video games.
Oh, is it like the what's being filmed? You mean?
Yeah. Not my bag.
Yeah.
So when I was latterly at the classical music, art stuff, I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. But am I allowed to say it here? The BBC is not the place it used to be. There's very little commissions now. BBC Music, BBC Arts has gone completely. I used to work on Imagine, the BBC flagship arts programme, used to film a lot of those. That's now not been commissioned anymore. There's no classical music documentaries anymore. The only thing that still happens is the proms, and that's now being made by an indie production company. So, that kind of area has gone, unfortunately.
So it's almost more important to you what it is that's being filmed rather than which role.
Yeah, the subject.
Yeah.
For me, the subject, again, very lucky, used to work on. It wasn't work. When I was involved, and they said, "Oh, we're going to Russia to make a program about Tchaikovsky." It's like, with the world's greatest orchestras. When I used to work on the proms, I used to do a lot of stuff for Radio 3. And I would just go and film the greatest musicians in the world in the studio just for me. And it's like, come on, who wouldn't want that? You could say, okay, equivalent for young people, going and make a film about Coldplay on your own.
And that sounds pretty cool.
So yeah, and again, just doing little things because you're in house at the time. Again, I don't know if any classical musicians here, but. There's a very famous conductor called Sir Mark Elder. And again, many years ago, someone decided they wanted him to present a series, and he'd never done TV before. So I spent a week with him, almost doing media training and on-camera training and stuff like that. And that is Sir Mark Elder, It's like it's like Tony Pano and people like that. The greatest conductor in the world.
Yeah.
So
it's quite inspiring.
Yeah. So now, okay. Yes, I work. I'm very lucky. Touch wood. I don't need to work for money anymore. I do it because I love work, but I find it frustrating that I just get called to do these odd jobs, and I don't like letting people down. And the thing I do miss, which is why I'm so pleased to be here, I miss teaching people. I miss passing on my skills because I used to at the BBC work with the BBC Academy. That ran training courses and stuff like that, and I used to teach the self-shooters how to shoot. We used to work with manufacturers, getting all the new cameras in, assessing them for HD and things like that. There was a time when Panasonic stopped talking to the BBC because we told them one of their cameras wasn't HD, and they didn't like it. We said, we can prove it. And they said, right, we're not talking to you. And so we used to do all that kind of engineering stuff, colorimetry. Myself and some colleagues would do all the colorimetry for the studio cameras to make, before everyone shot on log. So all those kind of things were fascinating and and again, teaching is something I've missed now, unfortunately.
See, well, hopefully we can get some of that in half an hour. Yeah.
But so in terms of disciplines, when I was doing films, it's like one day I'd be shooting, another day I'd be shooting multiple cameras with other camera ops. Other days I'd just be doing sound with a DoP, or me and a director would go off somewhere and interview people. So it was variety which I enjoyed, and the subject.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's telly now is kind of, it's split, it's polarised. There's lots of high-end drama, which is fantastic because, you know, the BBC and everyone is competing with Netflix and Amazon and Disney and Paramount and people like that. And then, unfortunately, it's done that. So all that middling stuff that I used to do, documentaries and things like that, has gone. So you get news journalists running around with their phones, and then you've got high-end doc stuff, high-end drama stuff. So, and then of course all now outside it's all socials.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, you've seen the industry change.
Yeah, and I think I kind of left the beat just at the right time.
Yeah.
Before I kind of got angry, bitter, and cynical.
I see.
Oh, that's me anyway.
I see. Cool. Well, thank you. And I think we'll get back to that BBC question actually. And Maryam, you do several roles as well, right? You do acting, directing, and producing. And how do you see those three? Like, do you have a favourite? Is it, you know, you want to be an actress, but you do producing out of necessity? Or is that the cliche? And is that not really?
So the short answer is yes, necessity is something that is in the background. But I think with me, it's more about, I like I said, filmmaking as a tool. I think for me, acting, it's more like filmmaking, it's a method of communication. But I never really direct something I act in, and I don't act in something I direct in. Like, that's like, for me, they're separate, but they're both parts of me. So for my acting, a lot of it, it's, I tend to do it in both Arabic and English. I'm bilingual. Both are my first languages. And when it comes to my producing and my directing, I think a lot of it, recently what inspires me more is, I mentioned already earlier that I like to blend elements of documentary and fiction. And one of my latest film that was screened at London Short Film Festival earlier this year,
Congratulations.
Thank you. One of the things I did is I went to, I would go to like vintage stores like in Cairo. There would be a lot of all sorts of media elements that are just there with no digital footprint. I would find like home videos on 8mm, and I would find some of them and bring them here to London to digitize.
And where do you find these? Is this like, are these yours or you just buy them?
No,
from
they're in
stores?
vintage stores. It's kind of like, you know, for example, you go to like, let's say, like a marketplace or like a flea market, and let's say there's all sorts of stuff that's either sold or abandoned or like it's been given away. And sometimes you find like old photos or old.
So these are like, this is footage of people you don't know, basically. You don't
Yes.
know the
Found
story.
footage.
Yes, found footage, and essentially it would be like some of them would literally have like the envelope where they had it when they got it returned from the person, the place that would scan and develop it. So you would have things like the date, like some of them would be from the 60s, some of them from the 70s, and I would digitize them. These ones did not have sound, but it's very interesting because it's like you would hear stories that your parents and grandparents would tell you, and then you would never get to obviously see it because you weren't alive then, but then you get to see this footage, and it's like literally the closest thing you'll ever see to seeing what they lived. So it's like very, it's like, oh, okay, so this is what it looked like to them. This is what like they lived this. This is what they lived. This is what they're talking about. And a lot of times it's sadly people that have passed away over the years or places that no longer look the same because of gentrification or war or whatever. And it's like, I think when I say I like filmmaking as a tool, for me that tool is kind of literally working through these things. It's exploring things that are kind of like that's not already there. Like I know what's already there, but what is it that's I don't know about? Because I don't want to know more of what I know or what I think I know. I want to look somewhere else and find something.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then when it comes to my acting, it's kind of like what would make a casting director, let's say, pick me as opposed to someone else? It's like I have to bring something that I think someone else cannot bring, or something that I bring that I feel is somehow more important. So the idea of what I choose to do with work, either as an actress or as a director, producer, it's like I want to bring something new. I don't want to be comfortable. I want to stay curious. So the idea is ways for me to keep being curious and finding out.
Yeah.
And pushing yourself and challenges and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can never be too comfortable. If I'm comfortable, I'm not comfortable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Exactly. It's like you don't want to fall back on comfortable things. You just want to push
Yes.
and go outside. Yeah.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yes, and it's this is obviously depending on what budget I have for whatever I'm working on, but yes, generally that's the idea.
Well, low budget makes you more creative.
Yeah.
Depends, but yes.
Yeah, within reason. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool, and I love that found footage idea. Actually, I never sort of heard of just getting footage in the store.
I should also mention there are, because I did this during my MA, one of the things that we would discuss is the ethical use of reproducing found footage. So obviously I had like a lot of found footage. I digitized it all, obviously, to see what's on it, but I did not use all of it. And then also one of the things I was doing during my MA is we were exploring AI with filmmaking and raising.
I was wondering how many minutes before AI gets mentioned.
It was literally the idea of exploring the concept of AI in filmmaking during my MA is to literally raise the questions before they are raised at you. You want to raise them. You actually have to look at it. You want to see, is it ethical to, because there is an AI software that called Topaz AI. It can technically kind of like refurbish older footage, but it raises the ethical question is, should we be trying to make things look perfect? Is it perfect? Is it truthful? What's the purpose of that? So anytime I feel there should be, in some capacity, anytime AI is used in any sort of media that is publicly presented, there has to be, not a disclaimer, but there has to be kind of like a declaration, this is AI. Like it's on social media, but I don't feel there's any like legislation for that when it comes to films as of yet, because there is a difference between simply really good graphics and animation and AI. They're not the same thing. Because with graphics and animation, that is an actual, usually a team of people actually doing something. Whereas with AI, you are literally just having someone else take the wheel, and that something else is learning from us. And we assume, we for some reason people still treat AI like it's actually intelligence, but it's not really intelligence.
Yeah.
So the fact that it has come to a point where even I look at things, I can't tell if it's AI. And I've been trained in how AI looks in filmmaking. So when I can't tell, I'm scared.
Yeah, that I agree.
But is AI not just what I would class as a very powerful computer tool?
It's because let's say a powerful tool is a calculator telling you 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah.
But then this thing is like writing a book, and it did not cite sources from where it got inspiration from.
Right.
For example, if you write a song and you have a very famous a whole verse that's from another artist, you have to give them royalties. AI is not subject to these terms and conditions because there is no way of regulating that.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes a problem. And also unauthorized use of certain things. It's not just about royalties, it's also taking things out of context.
So it's there, as you say, doing the job of a team of people by gathering information,
and it's
learning.
And it's not contextualized, and it's also not traceable.
Right.
So, whereas when a person says I did something, it's traceable.
Yeah.
Traceability is very important.
Yeah. So they and assessing rights and things like that. So is that what you're saying? So if someone says, "Oh, I want to use that from YouTube and change it," whereas AI just grabs it without telling anyone.
Yes, and then when you publish it, it's like the lawsuit is like, do we sue the software that enabled them to create this AI, or do we sue the person who used the AI software?
Yeah.
Or do we sue both? So it's kind of like who's liable.
Yeah.
You can't just say this non-sentient being is liable because it's not real.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting.
We have we'll have one more question each, and then we'll hand it over to the audience. The question I had for you, Luke, was, as you said, you worked for the BBC for many years, and I imagine that for a lot of the people in this room who are indie filmmakers, it would be their dream to work for a big movie production company such as the BBC. Do you have any advice? And the advice, you can choose whether it's how to get in or whether it's don't go, but do you have any advice for the many people that are dreaming to be for corporations such as the one you work for?
I think nowadays things are totally different from when I was there. Lots of people, I'm surprised that lots of people are still unaware that BBC, like Channel 4, like ITV, like Channel 5, it's basically a publishing house. So they have a pot of money and they get independent companies to make programs for them. Or these independent companies pitch ideas, then get a budget and make a program. So everyone thinks the BBC is, everything's made in-house. Okay? EastEnders, The One Show, Newsnight, things like that are made in-house by in-house teams. But everything else, whether it's Casualty, Doctors, Antiques Roadshow, Gardener's World, all these dramas, every drama is basically made by an independent production company. It's not made by the BBC. And that's one of the things that I find difficult with when you have scandals, I won't call them scandals, but issues that go on, whether it's the Greg Wallace thing or the Glastonbury thing. People always blame the BBC, but actually it's a production company. And okay, maybe there's an executive producer at the BBC who's meant to be looking after and keeping an eye on that production company, but it's quite difficult. So, as filmmakers, you could set up a production company and say, I'm going to make a film about X, Y, Z, and the BBC will give you a budget and it will go out. And if you look at the very end, it will say, made by Fred Blogg Productions. That's not a BBC production. So, getting into the BBC, I wouldn't think would be necessarily, again, I shouldn't say it, but for filmmakers, it's not
be the goal.
It's not the goal, no, unless you want to do news or work on EastEnders. There are lots of jobs. I see lots of jobs at EastEnders and stuff like that for script supervisors or production managers and stuff like that. There's lots of production jobs, but things like directors, assistant directors, all those creative jobs, it's all freelancers. Every production, all the big productions I used to work in, is all freelancers. And even some of the, say when I used to work on Imagine, which was the BBC Arts flagship programme, the directors, the producers were all freelancers. And they've been brought in to make a film about XYZ under the Imagine umbrella. So as freelancers, production companies, independent directors, your best bet is to talk to the commissioners and pitch ideas, as you would do to Channel 4, Lad Bible, all those any other streaming service. It's actually pitching ideas is now the way forward, and then making them yourself rather than getting to work for a big organisation. So, but big organisations will employ people, but it's mainly in production admin and production management rather than the creative side. So, unfortunately, so it's I class now the BBC the same as Channel 4. It's just a publishing house with a news division. So
even with smaller production companies, I've worked with them freelance. I've never been employed by a production house except on a freelance basis.
Exactly.
And it's like it's all the tasks like the first, let's say your first AD or you're in some capacity of production, even if you're a PA. It's all just like it's on a freelance basis. And I feel honestly like I don't know obviously about you. I can't speak for your experience, but honestly I think I kind of like the idea of freelancers and independent production companies actually getting to dictate things simply because it's like, okay, well, where does the narrative come from? There is no such thing as ubiquitous experiences. There are shared experiences, but there's no ubiquitous experiences. So the idea that there is one type of content that's universally accepted or liked or popular, there's so many different interests out there. So like the idea of just making a one-size-fits-all, perhaps it was applicable a long time ago. I don't know if it was, but now it's definitely less applicable if it was applicable prior to that.
Exactly, that's the thing. And again, a lot of producers I've worked with get very frustrated because they have an idea, a vision. Okay, we're mainly talking about documentaries and stuff like that. And they'll say, I've got this fantastic idea. But then the commissioners and the execs it's almost like filmmaking by committee. It waters it down. So I think if you have a true vision that you want to stick to, it literally is you have to make it as a movie, a film, and not involve the streamers or the broadcasters and just go down the independent film route.
or you'll actually do something where you'll have things like there's BFI Future Takes, which is you might get funds from the BFI. This is just one of many examples of funds where you kind of get funds to make like a sizzler or like a short as kind of like a proof of concept at a decent-ish budget. So you can then take that and pitch it to actual distributors or streaming services, depending on the route you want to go. So you kind of create like a pilot episode, like, okay, this is the world. And then, but even just to do that small bit to get the bigger piece, you still need funding for that. But it's kind of like, instead of just doing the whole thing independently, you do part of it, and then a bigger company can just buy you out. And essentially that way you get access to more resources to actually fulfill that vision.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like saying, you know, trying to get a job with a big organisation is a thing of the past. You know, and again, in terms of bringing on young directors, you know, many years ago, you know, there was a Play for Today, there was a Wednesday Play, and all that. You know, people like Ridley Scott started off making plays for TV, and in those days they were allowed to be nurtured and learn their craft in one-off plays. You know, if you think of all those fantastic TV films from the 60s and 70s, things like Kes, you know, the movie Kes, that started off as a TV film, but then was developed and turned into a proper movie. But those directors of that ilk all started and were nurtured at the BBC, but that's long gone now, unfortunately. So yeah, the roots now for creative filmmakers has to be, like you're saying, totally independent, trying to raise money. I know lots of film directors or friends of mine, it's like, unfortunately they have this creative outlet urge, but it gets swamped by the need to get funds, and get grants, and to kind of birth that idea into the world. It needs funding. So as you say, that's what, unfortunately, I'm sure it takes the time and effort.
Well, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I think
very depressing, unfortunately.
No,
There's like a whole strategy for like just simply applying to a fund for a film or creative project. There's like a whole process on its own.
Yeah.
And then that brings me to my last question for you, Maryam. You started the conversation on AI, so I think it makes sense to ask you about AI because you're quite well versed in it as well. For the filmmakers in this room or wherever that are now, being really interested in AI because suddenly they can make their vision come to life for a lot less money and a lot less time. What would be your advice on people using AI for their indie short film?
It's not going to be good. I'm not going to pretend it's going to be good, because even there's like advertisements out there that are made 100% AI, and it's like, you can tell it is AI. Like, that's something I could still tell is AI without being told it's AI. One of the few things that's still left. But like, it's just not going to work because I don't know. So give me something. Someone give me something. So what's something you think would be better with AI? Just one thing and one element of filmmaking that might be better. And I'll tell you what's the problem with that.
A dream sequence.
Okay, so the problem with the dream sequence is... so I think a lot of us who have dabbled or read about or talked about AI, one of the things earlier on was the issue of hands not looking like real hands, right? Yeah. So other than that, it's also the problem of people forgetting how to actually do things. Like actually being able to communicate their actual vision. Like, this is not AI, but this is very similar. So I am someone who's neurodivergent and dyslexic. So I remember when I was taught how to shoot on a digital camera, I would sometimes still get confused between the different settings. But then when I started shooting analog film photography, me learning how to take photos on an analog camera actually taught me how to use the digital camera better. And so the problem with AI is kind of similar to this, which is people have become so disconnected from feeling or communicating or making things by hand in a more tactile way that they not only not know how to do it, but they don't know how to communicate it anymore either. Because you're tailoring how you communicate it. Yeah. Usually you type a prompt, let's say to ChatGPT, do this or do that. The way you're phrasing it is to try to communicate to something that's been programmed, and then you forget how to communicate with yourself and other people. So none of this makes sense, literally.
Yeah.
Like, literally does not make sense. It does not compute. Yeah, so, and there's just limited imagination with AI because AI only knows what it's fed. Whereas you actually have free will. AI does not have that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this. I mean, we technically still have free will. Technically.
No, well, thank you for that. That brings us to the audience questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Obviously, you're very, very well versed in sound and have a lot of experience. And obviously, as a filmmaker, you know how incredibly important sound is. And tangential to that is the use of music. Probably working at the BBC, you're very familiar with the use of music becoming a lot more conventional over the years. And you know, apart from your kind of capturing the performances, it's a very different thing. How do you see like the progression in the future of using music and film now that we have this more TikTokified kind of zeitgeist where music has kind of reached its own sort of different existence than what it used to be traditional or conventional?
Shall I start?
Sure.
Okay, interestingly, the use of music, again, because I'm the old person here, going back, you know, and again, this is from a TV and movie perspective, you know, the director, producer would have a vision, a style, a mood, and quite often they would then get a composer, John Williams or something like that, to write music whilst watching the film and then conveying the mood, and that would be in a very analog way. So, you know, the music composer would compose film music, and that would then give you a sense of the mood of the film. I was talking to one of our LFA colleagues earlier, who reminded me there was a project recently where they showed a group of people a film with some music on it, and it just conveyed a mood, and then they showed the same bit of film with different music, and it changed the whole style and feel of the film. So your music is very important to set that style, and that's been going on for years and years and years. And again, when I started, I worked at Maida Vale again with the Radiophonic Workshop, if anyone knows the Radiophonic Workshop, where they would, very famously, they composed the Doctor Who theme, and they were at the forefront of electronic music. They were, you know, the instigators of the Moog synthesizer. I'm very old. I remember the Moog synthesizer coming in and being used, and everyone saying, "Oh wow, this is the future," you know, electronic music. And so it wasn't just then orchestras and music, it was all kinds of stuff to set the mood. And then, of course, now in the computer age, you can go online and say, I want a piece of music that's 3 minutes, 57 seconds, and I want it to start like that, I want it to end like that, and I want it to do this. And it's almost like AI. It'll just pop it on your timeline, and it's fantastic. So, you know, the way, you know, music and sound effects are used is still very, very important, but the nuts and bolts, the craft of it is totally different. But I think the importance is still really up there, and I think directors and producers and creative people need to think almost like you said in an analog way to achieve their goals in terms of music and sound design. Because sound design, again, I mean, I won't necessarily talk about it that much, but the sound design of a movie is so important compared with the pictures.
I am someone who is chronically online, so I spend probably more time looking at my phone than actual humans. In the flesh as opposed to ones on my phone. So I have this thing where sometimes I'm thinking of something that's happening or looking at something that's happening. I'm like, there's a TikTok sound for that would go really well with it. And I'm like, that tends to be how I think at this point. I sometimes tell my friends I think in meme formats or TikTok sounds. And it's somewhere, like, I feel the idea of TikTok sounds is somewhere between a genre and a sub-language. Because technically what all these things do, like music, language, images, moving image, they're all technically methods of communication. It's a very, I think, let's say, the kind of sounds or music you would hear on TikTok, the context of it on TikTok is kind of like, literally like a subculture or like a sub-dialect of sorts. And it's kind of like when you're creating music or doing something, I think you have to think of, regardless of whether it's the past, the present, or God knows the future, if we have that, it's a way of communicating. So maybe it's about intentionality. You have to know what you're doing, what you want to do, what's the intention, how it needs to communicate. So if it kind of communicates and it just makes sense, then I think that's the idea, regardless of whether it's something where it's like you're mentioning, either music to different pieces of composition with a certain scene and how they feel different, or whether it's literally the same video on TikTok but with different audios.
Thank you. Do we have another? Yes?
I have a question for both of you guys. So, based on your experience, like, what's your advice for build your own crew for your project, or finding a crew that you want to work with for the project you want? Because I'm studying in university right now, and I think university is a good platform, but it's also very limiting. Like, people are more like helping each other rather than like go for something they're interesting, or like go for the project they're interested in.
So I can start with that. So I did graduate last year. I don't know how I'm still surviving as a filmmaker, but I'm still surviving, so that counts. I think one thing you want to do is that think of like short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals in general as to what you want to do with your career. You might not know the exact things, but like just roughly have an idea, and then start with like the short-term goal. It's kind of like, okay, if you're working on a film now, what would you like to do with this film? Like, for example, my grad film, I remember when I was doing it, I'm like, now that I have access to student discounts and all these resources I will not have access to when I graduate, I will do everything I can with these things. So my priority was, okay, how can I get the most of what I have with a limited budget? So I remember in terms of hiring crew or how I make these decisions, I'm like, if I have limited money, let's say in my specific case, I had to prioritize that budget for production design and cinematography. So this was my priority for the budget. So if you have a limited budget, you have to have certain priorities for what is a deal breaker and what's not a deal breaker. And you probably want to work with people who have a similar understanding or vision as yourself, even if they're not as skilled, unless it's something really specific. But usually the idea of having people who share similar interests or vision or view things the same way, having conversations with them as opposed to just looking at a CV helps dictate whether this is someone you can work with or not. So it's always having conversations as opposed to just looking at CVs or texting, even if it's like a FaceTime, a Zoom meeting, whatever. I remember having back-to-back Zoom meetings when I was casting and recruiting for my graduation film. And I remember when I talked to people, that's how I kind of decided, okay, this person, we might work together, this person, maybe not as much. So you have to communicate and decide what's important and what's not as important. That's kind of how you make that decision. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I would reiterate that. It's about staying true to your vision and collaborating with people that share your style, your vision, or whatever. Yes, if you're at uni and you have a group of friends that, oh yeah, I've done camera before, I've done that, but someone might be wanting in their head to make a pop video, but you want to make a serious narrative. So there will be this inevitable on set, which is where you don't want it to happen, diversity of ideas. So yeah, it's very important to get people that have, you have, whether it's a mood board, a storyboard, or a short video or whatever, you look at other people's show reels and see, you don't want someone a DOP who's, does kind of daytime telly to make your moody noirish film. So, and I think it's exactly what you said, but it is also very important to put your money on screen in terms of design, costumes, if there are costumes and things like that, because setting that style first, if it's done well, anyone can point a camera at it and it'll look good. I'm not saying DOPs aren't important, because of course they are, but one of the things I actually say to people is, don't let the technology overtake the style and design. You know, yes, it's great if your DOP wants to use an Ariel F with anamorphic lenses, but if you haven't got budget for good style, a good costume or good actors, it's wasted. Whereas if you spend that money on costume design and sets, shoot it on your iPhone, it'll still look good.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, and it's about collaborations. A lot of the productions I've worked on, fantastic teams, we all get on, share the same vision, and yet I've worked on other dramas where the DOP's up his own arse, he keeps disagreeing with the director, and it's like that, it's horrible.
Sometimes DOPs in some situations, no shade to any DOPs, I love DOPs, sometimes there are moments where they become de facto directors on set.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like a bad thing. This is why it's important for the DOP and the director to get along, because sometimes the director wants something, they cannot communicate it, but the DOP will communicate it. So at least if if they're on the same page, it's not seen as a conflict. It's seen as, okay, you finish my sentence for me better than I do.
I mean, exactly that. So when I first started in the education department at the BBC, I used to get given, sorry, it sounds the wrong way, young directors doing their first thing. And as you say, it's about being able to put in words what they want. And sometimes they say, I say, right, let's do it this way. Let's get these shots, do a master shot, then we can do some reversing, then we do this, then we do this. And they say, yeah, that's right. So I didn't feel I was taking over, but I was feeling I was sharing that conduit. And so working with a DOP that shares your vision and doesn't say, oh, I know what you mean, let's go and do this over there, but it looked totally wrong. And as young emerging directors, you feel, oh, he's the big DOP, I don't want to disagree with him, but he or she isn't doing what I want. You need to be bold, you need to be assertive, but that's why it's important to get a team around you that shares your vision.
Well, thank you for that wisdom. Jeffrey, do we have time for one more question? Yes, we have time for one more question. Our first hand that goes up. Yes.
I have a question for Luke.
Yes.
So you said that you're obviously quite well experienced and you've seen the industry change. I had a question. If you were to start your career again today, what would you do, like the next steps that you would do?
Right. I'm a craft person. I've got no aspirations to be a director or a producer, or all the headaches that entails. So I'm a techie craft person. And if I was starting from scratch now, I would go to a production house, a kit rental facility, and work at the bottom and work up. Because most of the crews I work with now, they all started in kit houses and stuff like that. And again, after saying, it's from director's point of view, it's not about kit. If you want to be, work as a crew in the camera department or the sound department, you need to work your way up, and you need to, job shadow. You need to do traineeships and things like that. If anyone is on the craft side of the industry, there's a new scheme just about to be launched called Cine Certified. I don't know if anyone's heard of Cine Certified. It's on Instagram, there's a website, and it's a group of ACs, camera assistants, who are working to build a web app and a phone app to certificate their traineeship. So when you're a trainee working in a movie, you know, in the camera department, you know, you've got the DOP, you've got the operator, you've got the first AC, which is the focus puller, second AC, clapper loader, and then a trainee. And this group of ACs are working together to build a system whereby you can sign off your skills base with your DOPs or your focus pullers or whatever, and therefore have accreditation for when you want to move up from being a trainee to a clapper loader or whatever. That's just in the camera department. So there are lots of schemes if you want to become crew. But if I was starting, to answer your question, starting from scratch, easiest way, because there's lots of jobs out there, go and start in a kit house.
Thank you, Luke. And if anyone has any more questions for Luke, he will be doing the workshop. I think we'll probably
Right,
take
I think we're at time actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
We've got a lunch break now, but Luke is going to be staying here to run a sound workshop.
Yep.
So anyone wants to do that?